As a humanitarian crisis deepens and Israeli aggression persists, EU High Representative Josep Borrell arrives in Lebanon with a crucial mission to push for a sustainable ceasefire and de-escalation in the region. After meetings in Jordan with King Abdullah and Foreign Minister Ayman al-Safadi, Borrell is now in Beirut, where he will meet with Lebanese officials, including the caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati and the Speaker Nabih Berri, to discuss a path towards peace. This visit follows recent diplomatic efforts of US envoy Amos Hochstein, who travelled to Lebanon and Israel to boost the negotiations. However, despite these diplomatic pushes, challenges still remain and questions arise with both regional and global stakes at play. Can Borrell's diplomatic efforts bring Lebanon closer to peace, or will the region keep suffering? Welcome to In Depth.
منطقة سكنية لا فيها أشياء عسكرية ولا فيها شيء. مثل أول شيء أنا عاجز وبدي أهرب.
In a country of that size, which is relatively small, and a population that's estimated around 5 million people, you can imagine how dramatic it is that over 1 million people are now without shelter and on the move.
Al-Sharq Al-Awsat newspaper has reported that Josep Borrell, the European Union's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, emphasised that EU governments do not have the discretion to choose whether to implement arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court, or the ICC, against Israeli leaders and a Hamas commander. The ICC has accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant, and Hamas leader Ibrahim al-Masri of crimes against humanity. Borrell stressed that all EU member states are legally bound to enforce the court's decision, underscoring that this obligation is non-negotiable. EU's Josep Borrell arrives in Lebanon to meet top officials, continuing his diplomatic push for a ceasefire in Lebanon.
EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs Josep Borrell visits Lebanon today as part of a broader Middle East trip aimed at addressing the growing humanitarian and military crisis in Gaza and Lebanon. After meeting with Jordan's King Abdullah and Foreign Minister Ayman al-Safadi in Amman, Borrell will engage with top Lebanese officials, including caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati and Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, in an effort to push for sustainable ceasefire. Borrell has been vocal in his criticism of Israel's actions, condemning the ongoing aggression in Gaza and Lebanon. In a recent statement, he urged EU members to honor their obligations under the International Criminal Court, particularly regarding arrest warrants for Israeli leaders Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, who are accused of crimes against humanity. Borrell also condemned Israel's attack on UN peacekeepers in Lebanon and criticized the labeling of critics of Israeli policies as anti-Semitic, asserting his right to speak out against the Israeli government without facing such accusations. Borrell's visit follows his September trip to Egypt. He reiterated the importance of de-escalation and peaceful resolutions in the region.
After meeting Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri in Beirut, Borrell emphasised the need for urgent action and called for an immediate ceasefire and the swift implementation of UN Resolution 1701 by all parties involved. Borrell also reaffirmed the EU's readiness to support Lebanon, announcing €200 million in aid dedicated to strengthening the Lebanese army. He warned that Lebanon was on the brink of collapse and called for pressure to be exerted on the Israeli government to accept a ceasefire proposal. Borrell also urged Lebanese leaders to pick a president and to end a 2-year power vacuum in the country. To help us analyse the situation right now, we're joined from London by Nicholas Williams, a former NATO official, and from northern Lebanon, John Ferrelli, a researcher at Mashriq Center. Thank you both for joining us. Firstly, let's start off with Mr. Williams. Josep Borrell's visit to Lebanon comes at a critical time. In your opinion, what is the EU's main objective during this visit in relation to the US-initiated ceasefire agreements?
Well, I think it's their main priority at the EU is to support the US and French pressure on Israel now to accept this agreement. I think it's clear that Lebanon is inclined to accept, and it's just an indication that Lebanon's good negotiating position and agreement will be backed up by the EU with money, with aid, with economic assistance. So that's the EU's prime purpose, to support the budding peace deal.
Okay, Mr. Ferrelli, you heard Mr. Williams talking about the idea of, support, financial support from the EU in general. In your opinion, Borrell's visit this call for Lebanon to appoint a new president and to end the 2-year power vacuum. How critical is this for political stability in Lebanon and for the success of a ceasefire negotiation, in addition to long-term peace efforts, including financial support from the EU?
The Lebanese cause, the fact that it's being put just on center stage at the international level is of huge importance by itself. And I think that Lebanon is ready to negotiate peace, and the ball in that is in Israel's court. Of course, things have to go beyond that as well. The ceasefire is the start of the solution in Lebanon, because we need a new president, we need a new social contract amongst all Lebanese. We also need to implement the Nations Special Council resolutions 1559, 1580, and 1701. And hopefully the talks and the initiatives done by Hochstein and Borrell and other international actors can help us implementing these resolutions under Chapter 7, of course.
Okay, Mr. Williams, Josep Borrell has been quite outspoken when it comes to the Israeli actions in Gaza and Lebanon. And he has not visited Israel previously and has denied to go there. How does this stance influence the ongoing negotiations and also his recent statements when it came to, applying international law after the ICC rulings?
Well, he's a prominent statesman, representing a prominent organization in foreign policy, but the EU itself is a European Union in name only in this affair. Many countries, or a few countries, don't sympathize with Hamas or Hezbollah, and they regard Hamas and Hezbollah as problems.
But the sympathy towards these organizations or groups is not necessarily related to, Israeli actions. Borrell was outspoken about Israeli actions when it came to Lebanon and Gaza, not towards these groups, but rather their actions that have led to, a lot of civilian deaths.
Yes, I agree totally. But the problem is he's speaking for an organization that doesn't have an overall policy. They can only agree on the financial side, the aid side, helping the helping the Lebanese army to take control of the south of the Litani River. So Borrell is going to be replaced. This is his last excursion as High Representative. He will retire, and he will be replaced by Kaja Kallas from Estonia, whose main interest and experience is with the Russians, and her main priority will be to bolster EU support for Ukraine, not Lebanon, and so on. So yes, it's helpful, and it adds to the pressure on Israel, but it's not decisive.
Okay. Mr. Farghali, with Borrell pledging 200 million euros to Lebanon and their armed forces, how significant is the EU military support to the Lebanese army going to facilitate the implementation of what's been called for internationally, the UN Security Council Resolution 1701, that requires the army's presence on the borders? Do you think that this money will be enough to support the Lebanese army and upgrade their capabilities?
It's not just about the money, actually. It's also about the willingness to implement such a deal. We have seen that since 2006, millions of funds have been put, and the countless peacekeeping members were south of the Litani, but we have not seen any credible outcome. As a matter of fact, we have seen that, like we're seeing today, the complex military operations that have been done by Hezbollah and the stashing of the weapons and the artillery and all that. So even more than the money, I think there needs to be a willingness, there needs to be this consensus to agree that we need to put an end to this once and for all. Of course, the money matters, and the way it's used matters even more. So as Lebanese people, we just hope that the implementation goes much stricter than it was before. So.
Okay, Mr. Williams, you already spoke about the idea that Borrell is not staying, and that his predecessor, rather the person who's going to take his place, is probably going to focus on the Ukraine. But until he leaves office, how significant is his push for a sustainable ceasefire in Lebanon, and what concrete steps can the EU take to ensure the success of this? I mean, we've seen Macron putting some sort of pressure on the Israelis to negotiate for a ceasefire. Will other EU countries follow suit?
Some EU countries, the major EU countries, Italy, Spain, those who are interested in the Lebanon and are at risk from the conflict in the Middle East, will support Borrell and take actions or diplomatic pressures themselves. But as of now, it's in the, as my fellow guest says, the ball is in the Israelis' court. It seems that the Lebanese, with some support from the EU and the United States and others, are willing to implement the draft peace process or peace deal. It's the Israelis who insist that they want to finish some business, kill Hamas, Hezbollah leaders, and so it's in their court. And I think this pressure, mounting pressure, does help. But it's, as I said, it's not decisive. The Israelis, I think psychologically, are in the mode of trying to finish what they want to do.
I believe, sir, I'm sorry if I'm following up with a question here, but the thing is, you were saying to eliminate that I suppose the international community will accept, since the top leaders have basically been annihilated.
The Israelis are spending a lot of credibility and diplomatic capital by persisting in this campaign when it's evident to all the world that they've achieved at least what they can achieve, even though in the long term there's no solution there. But still, they're losing credibility, the Israelis.
Okay, before we continue discussing this topic, let's take a look at the public opinion in Israel regarding the war on Lebanon. So if you could both stay with us, and everyone watching, stay with us. Welcome back. We're still with Mr. Nicholas Williams, a former NATO official, and John Ferrelli, a researcher at Mashreq Center. Thank you both for waiting with us. My question here is from Mr. Ferrelli. The Israeli media reported that, according to a survey, the majority of the people in Israel support a ceasefire in Lebanon. Do you think that there could be public pressure internally on the Israeli government to conclude this war and conclude a deal?
I think there's a bit of a dilemma maybe amongst the public opinion in Israel, and the fact that, of course, they would opt for a ceasefire. I mean, the natural instinct to go is to oppose war after all, but also they are aware that Israel needs to finish what they started. I don't think that Israel has finished what it plans to do in Lebanon and in Gaza. Their agenda is still, not quite done. So, but at the same time, this pressure from the people urging them to agree to a ceasefire is sort of mounting. But I believe that the war will reach its end. A ceasefire will be put into place once Israel gets reassured of its demands, and that its northern borders will be safe permanently, and the population of northern Israel can return.
Well, sir, you just said one of the main objective here for what's happening in Lebanon is for the residents of the north to return back to their homes. But wouldn't diplomatic efforts also achieve this? Because, I mean, we've seen from the infograph right there that the Israeli public has seen this ongoing aggression happening for the last year or so, and things really haven't changed. Is this probably why they're pressuring the Israeli government?
Maybe. It could be, yes. And I don't think that Israel wants to return to a status of the situation that was before the war. That's the thing, actually. They don't want to end the war with Hezbollah remaining, because Hezbollah could still, get more funds, get more arms if they remain active in the south. So Israel wants to put an end to its border issues, and the same thing goes to Hamas in Gaza. Israel wants to resolve these issues once and for all, so that they can ensure a safe return to the people. And I think that's what they're trying to explain to their people who are pressuring them to agree to a ceasefire. So I think Israel should agree to a ceasefire, but not without diplomatic reassurances that the situation in southern Lebanon and in Gaza are resolved once and for all and permanently.
Okay, Mr. Williams, if we could move to you, sir. While no details have been announced yet on the progress of the ceasefire negotiations, What do you see are the biggest challenges facing the talks in Lebanon? Mr. Borrell spoke a bit about, Israeli objectives in general, and they don't seem to, want to give some sort of leeway towards reaching a ceasefire. Do you think this is the biggest challenge facing the ceasefire negotiations?
Well, it's difficult to pinpoint the precise difficulty because I think there are several. But one of the difficulties, which is underestimated, is the Israeli cabinet. And in this sense, there are indications that Netanyahu actually would favor a deal along the lines that Hochstein has negotiated. But it's his extreme far right colleagues who are holding out. And so one of the difficulties is this very fragile, very difficult coalition in Israel, and the cabinet is split accordingly. And so that's, I think, one difficulty. The other difficulty is the objectives are very unclear. Yes, to put 100,000 or 80,000 citizens, Israeli citizens, into northern Israel in safety. Yes, but there's no real trust between Hezbollah and Israel, and so Israel will want to reserve the right to attack Hezbollah if they see signs of resurgence.
Okay, Mr. Ferrelli, you heard Mr. Williams talking about the idea of a lack of trust between both sides and how Israel wants to reserve the right to do whatever it wants. Hezbollah's Naim Qassem also voiced skepticism about the ceasefire agreement with Israel's commitment towards this agreement, as Mr. Williams said. In your opinion, what actions or assurances are needed from the Israeli side for the ceasefire to truly be sustainable? Mr. Ferrelli? Yeah.
Yes. That are needed from the Israeli side is to, well, first of all, I think the major issue of Lebanon is involved in the war is due to Hezbollah uniting the front with Gaza. So Israelis' reassurances have to start there, start in Gaza, and that's when Hezbollah, mainly the main actor who is going at war with Israel currently, will, and subsequently its sponsor, the caretaker Iran, will maybe take these reassurances from Israel. So in a nutshell, once Israel backs out or dials down on Gaza and the people in Gaza, the situation will slowly begin to improve in Lebanon, and the ceasefire can be agreed upon between Israel and Hezbollah.
Okay, Mr. Williams, Mr. Ferrelli spoke about the idea that it's all sort of interconnected and it starts and stops at Gaza. Once that situation is handled, everything else should sort of settle down. Do you think, I mean, if we could look towards the future, do you think if continues and the ceasefire does not succeed, do you think that the new US administration, for instance, in coordination with the EU, could possibly reach a ceasefire deal, or will things, somehow change or continue in the same path?
Well, it's the problem with the Trump administration, future Trump administration, is that no one knows how active he will be in foreign policy. His pitch to the American public was that he was going to focus on domestic issues. Yes, he will try to end the war in Ukraine, and he will make efforts to negotiate or talk with leaders in the Middle East to appease the
domestics, yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir, we're out of time, so I'm sorry I have to cut you off there. That was Nicholas Williams, the former NATO official, joining us from London, and from Northern Lebanon, John Virelli, researcher at Al Mashriq Center. Thank you both for your insights, and thank you for joining me here on In Depth. That brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more here on Q News.